my heart is happy to see all these beautiful faces, a few people that I know, and my training team, and some new faces, which is a wonderful combination. Very inspiring for me. So thank you for being here. And thank you to Jordan Peace for making this community service available. I know he's been doing that for many, many years, and it's wonderful to see. I want to let you know that everything I'm going to talk about this evening about Hakomi and the founder, who was named Ron Kurtz, it's all very personal to me. So this is something that I'm devoted to. I spent many years working with him, basically the last 14 years of his life, and experiencing Hakomi. And in all the things I've experienced in my life, it is far above anything else that I have experienced personally. And so everything I talk about will be from my experience, direct experience. And I want to start by reading the first poem that Ron Kurtz read in the first training that I did. And so I think because of that, it maybe is one of my favorite. So this is Hafiz, and it's, I know the way you can get. I know the way you can get when you have not had a drink of love. Your face hardens, your sweet muscles cramp, children become concerned about a strange look that appears in your eyes, which even begins to worry your own mirror and nose. Squirrels and birds sense your sadness and call an important conference in a tall tree. They decide which secret code to chant to help your mind and soul. Even angels fear that brand of madness that arrays itself against the world and throws sharp stones and spears into the innocent and into oneself. Oh, I know the way you can get if you have not had a drink of love. You might rip apart every sentence your friends say. Look for hidden causes. You might weigh every word on a scale like a dead fish. You might pull out a ruler to measure from every angle in your darkness the beautiful dimensions of a heart you once trusted. I know the way you can get if you have not had a drink from love's hands. That is why all the great ones speak of the vital need to keep remembering God. So you will come to know and see him as being so playful and wanting, just wanting to help. That is why Hafiz says, bring your cup near me. For I am a sweet old vagabond with an infinite leaking barrel of light and laughter and truth that the beloved has tied to my back. Dear one, indeed, please bring your heart near me, for all I care about is quenching your thirst for freedom. All a sane man can ever care about is giving love. So, this flyer says that I'm here to talk about deepening true self-connection with the Hakomi method. So I'll do my best to communicate that. And it actually is the most profound way I've found in my life after over 30 years of searching and experiencing various modalities and sacred medicines and all kinds of things. Hakomi continues to impress me the most. And as I look back on my life, the Hakomi experience has benefited me the most in a lasting, profound, experiential, changing my life for the better way. And so, see my notes. So I had a long history with Ron, as I said, about 14 years at the end of his life. And he did live in Ashland. There's so much to say. It takes me a moment to decide what to say first. So my background, before I moved to Ashland, I was a designer and manufacturer of high-end furniture. They called it to the trade in those days. And I lived in Los Angeles, and I had a showroom in Los Angeles and a showroom in New York City. And I was not into spiritual things at all. As a matter of fact, I was a nice atheist because I believed in science. And the little bit that I knew about religion, like, you know, sex is a sin and things like that, I really hadn't developed an interest in spirituality. I was into design and traveling and that kind of life, and children, actually. So, in addition, though, I was also involved in midwifery. So when I was a young woman, I spent about 10 years attending home births. So I was a lay midwife attending home births and teaching childbirth classes. And along with my furniture business, I was juggling everything. But looking back, I now consider the period of midwifery involvement as really the beginning of my spiritual education. I didn't know that at the time, but it definitely was. But in 1994, the summer of 1994, I came to Ashland to spend 2 months here for holiday with my young children at the time. And here I am, this, you know, businesswoman from LA, not into spiritual things. And I began, as I'm running around with the kids and flying back and forth to LA, and my husband and I took turns, I started to have really unusual, for me, completely out of the blue, psychic experiences. I had some visionary experiences and psychic stuff, like I knew what people were going to say, I knew what their names were, all these strange things, and it would happen. I would just kind of go, oh, that's weird, and go on about my busy life. But one day before the 2 months was up, about 2 weeks before I was supposed to go back to LA, I was sitting alone in this rented house. The kids were at a camp, and I had a very powerful and profound spiritual experience. A presence came into the room, and it was just so real and so visceral, and a lot of information that you can't even repeat, but there were some very clear words that said, "You're supposed to move here." You know, I had this big business. I had all these plans, you know. But it was so compelling and so real. I literally called my husband and said, I want to move here. And he said, well, yeah, maybe we should check out Malibu and some other place. I said, you don't understand. I am moving here, whether you do or not. And so 6 weeks later, we moved here. I had gone back to LA, sold my business. It was pretty miraculous how it all came together, and then drove here with my youngest children. I think they were 4 and 11 at the time, so they could start school August 31st, 1994. And because I had sold my business, I just really jumped off a cliff. You know, I just followed that impulse, and in a very short period of time, after moving here, looking at the thing on the floor I'm supposed to stand by. Within a very, I mean, it was really a display. Looking back again, when these things happen to you, especially out of the blue, me knowing nothing about spiritual stuff, it just happened. And I just kind of accepted it and went with it because there was so much energy around it. But anyway, I was introduced to a Tibetan Buddhist teacher and had one of those powerful recognition kind of experiences with this person. It was a woman, and I think that was an important element for me, because if it hadn't been a woman, I love men, it's not about that, but I did have this prejudice about religion. If the religion didn't include the opportunity for women to serve in the same kinds of ways as men. And so I was really delighted at this woman Tibetan Buddhist teacher. And I became, within a month, I had turned a space on my property into a Tibetan Buddhist practice space and shrine room. And for a number of years, there was just this incredible display with that experience. Chagdu Tukul Rinpoche, who was the head lama of that lineage that I was involved with, named the center Minjir Ling, which meant immovable. And that's another story, but there's a lot of stories around how miraculously I have managed to keep that property. So a lot of miracles for that to happen with all the difficulties with COVID and other things that I went through. So within a couple of years after that, being so involved with the Tibetan Buddhist community, it was beautiful, and the teachings I absolutely embraced. I mean, to me, the basic foundational Buddhist teachings are so beautiful, and I was really excited about it because it was about love and compassion and non-judgment, and I was excited to embrace those teachings. And over time, I started to be, though, disappointed in what I experienced was a lot of the people in the community, even though when the teachers, the lamas and the teachers were around, it was a beautiful energy, but when they would go, some of that loyalty to the teachings kind of went away. And I was disappointed, but also understanding. So I was really grappling with that a little bit, and I started to see a counselor, a therapist here in Ashland, who was a spiritually oriented person. And so I was doing some therapy with him, and one day he said to me, you know, I think a lot of what's going on with you is trauma. I think you have PTSD, was the term that he used at the time. And he said, it just so happens that there's someone who lives in Ashland who is really very well known for working with trauma. and I suggest that you try to find this person. His name is Ron Kurtz, and he's engaged with something called Hakomi. So I started trying to find this person, and I finally got a phone number and called, and what I was told is that he was no longer seeing clients, and he was mostly traveling since he had been divorced and his life changed. He was still lived in Ashland, but not here that often. So I gave it up and went on. And I would say maybe about 3 weeks later, a friend of mine, a new friend who had moved to Ashland fairly recently, invited me to his house for a meeting because he wanted to start a spiritually oriented school in Ashland. He was someone who had actually established the first acupuncture school in the United States. So he was really enthused about this idea. And so I came, and there were just a few people there, and everyone talked and so forth, and he introduced this person, and it was Ron Kurtz. So I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. So we had our meeting, and I didn't say anything, but at the very end of the meeting, Ron Kurtz looked at me, and I don't remember what he said, but he's kind of famous for saying these little, throwing out something, an observation, because Hakomi is so much about nonverbal communication, so it's about observing the nonverbal aspects of people, you know, their physical self and their energy. And so he said something that really got my attention, and I said, well, I actually tried to find you to see if I could do therapy with you. My therapist said that would be a good idea, but I was told that you're no longer working with people. And he said to my friend, he said, Ernie, do you have my book? And Ernie said yes. We happened to be standing in his library telling the story. It sounds almost unreal, but we're standing in this room with a bunch of books. Ernie pulls Ron Kurtz's book off the shelf. Ron Kurtz opens it up, writes his phone number and name, and he hands me the book. He says, Ernie, I'll get you another book. And so I'm like, okay. He said, call me. So I went home, took the book, I called him. A few days later, he said, well, I don't have an office, but I could come to your house. So he came to my house. My kids are downstairs running around. We're upstairs in my bedroom, which was a big room with a sitting area. So the first session with him was in my bedroom with kids running around downstairs, and I'd had a lot of therapy. In Los Angeles, before I moved here, I've been with a really good therapist for 10 years, doing group therapy and individual therapy weekly. So I wasn't new to therapy, but this first session with Ron, you know, he's sitting across from me, and he said, just say a few things, just talk a little bit. So I said a few sentences, and then he stopped me and said, would you mind if we do a little experiment? I said, okay. And he said, have you done any meditating? Well, I felt really cool because I'd been doing a lot of meditating with the Buddhist groups. And so I said, yes, I do know how to meditate. And he said, well, if you'll go into a state of mindfulness where you're just going to pay attention to your inner experience. You know, I'm going to do this experiment, so that's all you have to do. So he said, I noticed when you were speaking that you turned your head a little to the side instead of looking directly at me. He said, will you, I'm going to give you some time to make sure that you're in a state of mindfulness, and then I'm going to ask you to say the sentence that you said, but this time consciously look straight forward at me. So that was this was like 5 minutes into the thing. And so I did, and it was unbelievable. I mean, it's still miraculous to me the way Hakomi works, because I immediately had an experience of going to a place within myself that I had never experienced. And it was a very young, traumatic childhood experience, a memory. And so he worked with me about that, and that was my first experience. And it was incredible. And I felt the effects of that. I mean, almost whatever that issue was, it resolved. And I think that's something that is extremely unusual about Hakomi, is that Ron Kurtz spent over 40 years developing Hakomi. And it was really, his heart, soul journey in life to devote himself to developing Hakomi. And he developed it in such a way that he didn't just come up with this method and then just start doing it and that was it. He continued to change it and alter it, and he called it refining it at the end. He talked about refining it. And I was really impressed with that, because what he actually did in refining it was he made it less complicated. And almost everything that I was learning about was like complicated and more complicated. And this was so simple. And so I really admired that. I also admired that he conducted himself in a way that was completely in alignment with the principles of Hakomi and the principles of Buddhism and the principles of Taoism. And those are the two schools of spirituality that most influenced Hakomi. Also, I would say, the part of Christianity that's the teachings of Christ, also completely in alignment with the principles of Hakomi. So I was really impressed with that. As a matter of fact, he always, from the time I met him until he died, he always conducted himself honorably, always in alignment with Hakomi principles. And he was divorced at the time, but he was very open about the fact that he wanted to reunite with his wife and daughter. And he spoke so highly in such a inspiring way about his love for his wife and his child. And he would weave that into his teaching and our time together. And I believe within a few years after I began working with him, he did remarry his wife. And I was impressed with that. That I could see him evolving, and that the ideas that he was teaching was real for him. So I really admired that too. So the way we started, because he had been taking a break traveling, and he hadn't been doing what we used to call therapy sessions, because Hakomi has really two parts. One is there are these beautiful sessions, like what I described that he did with me when I first met him. And so with Hakomi, it would be the person that's the therapist and the client, but he only did a session with me alone one time. And every time after that, there were always at least two assistants. So that's something that sets Hakomi apart from other modalities or other kinds of therapy, is that it's never one-on-one. It's always with at least a couple of assistants. And it's for very practical reasons, but I won't go all into it because I have a lot of things I want to share, but there are some profound differences in the power dynamic. one-on-one, one person is the boss and the one that knows everything, and and that isn't there at all with Hakomi. Hakomi is it's a completely different paradigm, honestly, from anything else that I've ever experienced. I don't know anything else that is even close to it. I'm not saying it's not out there, but I haven't experienced it. So after we met and that first session, then we started to, I helped him organize these groups where we would meet for a whole day, and he would do one session after another. So these kind of personal sessions with the rest of the group assisting, and it was completely mind-blowing. I mean, I'd never experienced anything like it. The things that happened to me, what I experienced, went so deep. Again, after all those years of therapy, I was learning things I didn't know about myself, experiencing, welcome. Sorry. It's okay. I started to have, during the sessions too, I started to have past life memories, which was mind-blowing to me, but that started to happen. Then, in the summer of 2000, he said to me, I'm going to do a training, and I would really like you to be involved in this training. And I thought to myself, well, why do I need to go to a Hakomi training? Because I've had, several years of sessions. I saw hundreds of sessions, which was incredible. But he said, no, it's different. And I think you would really enjoy it, and I think you would benefit. So he really strongly encouraged me. And because of that, I did go. And the first training, something happens in these trainings. I think because he spent 40 years gradually developing what happens at these trainings. And it is in such a different paradigm. It's all experiential, and the principles, which I'm going to tell you about shortly. And I remember sitting there and having all these experiences, seeing other people. I think in that group there was a well-known psychiatrist who also was a professor, and I can't remember the school. But I remember seeing him go through these incredible experiences that he'd never had before. And I kept thinking, what is this? This is like magic. What's going on here? I kept saying, this is magic. This is magic. I didn't think about magic, but that's the word that came to me. And I began to really learn about how to embody those qualities that Ron Kurtz displayed, and which is what the trainings are about. Because whether you do a Hakomi training to learn to be a practitioner or for your own unfolding, it's the same experience for everyone. You enter it and you experience it, and you experience yourself, and that's the learning about your true self. I mean, the true self connection is so there, unlike anything I've ever experienced. So that summer of 2000, I began to realize that with my children, I still had a really young daughter. She was 10 that summer. And I was in the bedroom with her one day. She was talking to me. And I realized, oh my goodness, I'm actually not really completely focused on her and truly listening to her. I'm thinking about other things and, half listening. And I had never realized that before. And so I I made an agreement with myself that I would change that, and that when I was with her, from then forward, I would really, truly tune into her completely and listen during those times. So I think that summer it was a month-long training, and towards the end of that training, I came home one day, and this was sitting there. So, and my 10-year-old daughter had painted it. And so this is very meaningful to me because of that memory. And I'd like to think, I mean, she is an artistic person, and she now designs and manufactures clothing, and actually the trousers are her design. But I like to think that maybe there was some inspiration, you know, from what we experienced together in Hakomi. I do believe now in the field, and I know that the field has a profound capacity to interconnect us in strange and amazing ways. So anyway, she painted this when she was 10, and it's very meaningful to me because of that. So someone asked about the story of the painting. So thanks for asking.
Well, yes, thank you for sharing that story.
You're welcome. So that began a whole nother phase of me being involved in these trainings and how powerful they were. And I just, I assisted him with marketing things and developing a lot of the curriculum. And from the moment I met him and we started doing these trainings, he made it very clear his main emphasis was to, in the beginning he called it simplify. He wanted to simplify the method. And he basically made it, in the beginning of his career, he wanted to be accepted by the psychotherapeutic community. And he had some parts of Hakomi that were like character theory, and there would be these different characters, and you'd analyze, you know, the client based on that. Well, he completely got rid of it. He said, we don't need that. We don't need to label anyone. That's actually an unnecessary limitation. So I really admired that. So this part of him making it more accessible, eliminating any parts that weren't absolutely necessary, and as he did that, it got more powerful. The more simple, the more powerful. And so I was very intimately involved in that part of it. And in 2002, Ron Kurtz and I decided to establish what we called Hakomi House. And it was in the guest house on my property, the same building that the Tibetan Buddhist Center had been at. And they had moved on, and we turned that building into what we called Hakomi House. And the purpose was for him to focus on this goal of simplifying and really defining his legacy, essentially. And we started by having a group that would go for a year. We met every weekend for a year, and he talked to us about stories, and we would do various experiments with this whole idea of how simple it could be. And I actually I have a whole bunch of his archives and all kinds of things from the past, and we plan to develop some kind of a library for some of these things. But I just brought a couple of things because it's just interesting seeing the evolution. This is the one book that he wrote by himself. And he called it Body-Centered Psychotherapy. And this is the book that he gave me. This isn't the exact one. I still have to find that one. But this was in his archives. I had boxes of things that he had left on my property. So, body-centered psychotherapy, right? That was what he was calling it when the book was written. And this was published in 1990. So I met him in 97. And so he had evolved since this book was written. And in 2002, this is just a little training manual that we put together in 2002 during that Hakomi House era, and he called it Hakomi Experiential Method. So he changed the title, he was moving away from that medical model in many, many ways. So Hakomi Experiential Method, and then in 2003, so just to show you how quickly this was all changing. So in 2003, this was a manual, and he was calling it Hakomi Simplified. Hakomi Simplified. That's what, so for quite a few years it was Hakomi Simplified. And he had these flow charts of sessions, that had the essential elements, and then at the very end, he was calling it Refined Hakomi. Refined Hakomi was the final version of Hakomi that he spoke about. So in 2003, during all these trainings, he certified me as a Hakomi therapist. That's what they were calling it at the time. And in 2004, he certified me as a teacher. And so I was involved in all those ways in those years. And skipping forward, in the summer of 2010, he was doing a master class on my property. By this time, we had changed from the guest house, and Ron Kurtz and I had talked for years about what would be the ideal space for a Hakomi experience. And in 2007, I actually built that space on my property, a space that reflected all of these things that we had talked about, that feels really safe and private and beautiful. And so from that time, we use that space. I call it the sanctuary. And so in 2010, he was doing a training there. I had actually been away a lot for a couple of years, attending to some very intense family issues. And so it was almost a bit of a reunion again. I came back and participated in that training and had a really powerful session with him, which is in the film that we'll be showing in a little more than a week. And you saw it. But that session got incorporated into his last public talk because he thought it was such a good example of a Hakomi session. Because that summer he was filming his sessions, kind of as in this idea. He was getting older, and he wanted to have a way of communicating what Hakomi was after he was no longer here. So that summer, we got together and decided to start what we would call the Ron Kurtz Center for the teaching of Refined Hakomi. And we got it going. We had a website and developed the curriculum, and he did a public talk at the Havara here in Ashland. It was December 2nd, 2010. And that's the talk, the film that we'll be showing, and you can see it. There's a link on our website too, so you can see it in that way too, if you'd like to. And it was very beautiful. Then we broke for the holidays, and January 4th, 2011, we were supposed to get together and begin again, and we had like 250 days of trainings scheduled for that year, for 2011. And that morning, I woke up and felt very strange and started to work, and I had a staff and people in my office, and I started crying. I just started crying a lot that day, and very unusual for me. That's not usually how I behave, especially when it's like business time. And my assistant said, well, maybe you should, go cancel the plans. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. Anyway, a few hours later, I got the call that he had died. And it was on an eclipse. So that changed everything, and that's another story. But we did, I guess the final thing that I will share about that is that myself and so many people that we were heavily involved in doing, I think a couple of trainings had happened since he had died. This was, no. Now I'm skipping ahead. Pardon me. My memories are getting mixed up. Let's just say many people had strong experiences of Ron after he died. There were all kinds of things that happened that were unusual and got our attention, and there's a lot of stories there too. But we continued with the Ron Kurtz Center for about 7 months, and it was going beautifully. We actually were having a summer, month-long summer training, and about 3 weeks into it, then I had a serious car accident, July 22nd of 2011, and then it stopped. So I haven't been involved with Hakomi since then. So I've had a 14-year period of pretty much being a hermit, going inward and going through it, and this experience of recovering. And to me, it's all a spiritual journey. And recently, circumstances have come together, and my energy and others that want to be involved, my training team that are here tonight. And we started again this May. We began to we're meeting 1 weekend a month, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we have 3 months left, so September, October, November. So if anyone is inspired after this talk and would like to experience a weekend, that is possible, to just come for 1 3-day weekend, or the remainder of these trainings for this year. And it is this just very soft beginning to re-enter the field of Hakomi and begin gathering again. And the intention is also to preserve his final teachings and his final version of Hakomi, practice it, preserve it. We will only be doing in person. Lots of people are doing online trainings of all kinds, and not that that's bad, but we will be offering a very pure, authentic, exactly what I experienced with Ron Kurtz. is what we will be doing. And I can say that with confidence now because we have 4 months that we've all been together, and it's beyond encouraging. It's actually beyond what I thought it might be. So that is where we are right now. And I want to now begin to speak about the principles of Hakomi and just a little bit more about it. Just looking at the time. I'm not that good about time. So Hakomi does operate on a very different paradigm. And when you are in the room and experiencing it, it is basically to practice it as the practitioner or the teacher or the therapist, you have to go into a state of altered consciousness, basically, because you're not in ordinary consciousness. Hakomi operates in non-ordinary consciousness. And the basic principles are, he called it the number one in this book. The number one principle he starts with is what he called organicity. And it's really about living systems, right? And that paradigm, as opposed to mechanical, it's that we trust the process. We trust that if we allow things to unfold, that it's going to unfold in a healing way, if we are true to the principles. And we're there to assist and support and nurture, but the client heals themselves. In Hakomi, we give the client credit for healing because we know it's not us, it's not the therapist, it's not the group, it's the person is the one that has the insights. And in Hakomi, no one, even if we're psychic or we're very intuitive and we're sitting with someone and we get a lot of information, we would never talk about that because that's not what it's about. We're there to assist the person to experience their own insights. And when you experience your own insights, it's very empowering. And then it's real, and then you're likely to change your life because you're inspired by what you experienced. So I'm just going to shift briefly. So I've shown you body-centered psychotherapy, and this is a book that was in Ron's archives that actually I hadn't read, quite honestly. I got all of these archives and started looking at it, and this is such a great book. I'm obsessed with this book. It's The Tao of Leadership. So, and again, Hakomi is definitely, I would say, Buddhist, Taoism, very equally inspired by both of these schools of thought. But there's one page that I think gives a really clear example of this concept that I'm talking about. So I'll just read this. And excuse me, it's being a midwife. The wise leader does not intervene unnecessarily. The leader's presence is felt, but often the group runs itself. Lesser leaders do a lot, say a lot, have followers, and form cults. Even worse ones use fear to energize the group and force to overcome resistance. Only the most dreadful leaders have bad reputations. Remember that you are facilitating another person's process. It is not your process. Do not intrude. Do not control. Do not force your own needs and insights into the foreground. If you do not trust a person's process, that person will not trust you. Imagine that you are a midwife. You are assisting at someone else's birth. Do good without show or fuss. Because and I was a midwife, so it's very meaningful to me. Because when you're a good midwife, it's not about you at all. You are devoted to that person giving birth, and you want that person to be empowered. Facilitate what is happening rather than what you think ought to be happening. So, we say the best leader follows. So we follow what's happening with the person. If you must take the lead so that the mother is helped, yet still free and in charge. When the baby is born, the mother will rightly say, "We did it ourselves." That so well describes the beauty of Hakomi. And I think this idea of organicity. So that's only number one. Number two is mindfulness. So I bet everyone here understands what mindfulness is, but Ron Kurt says that in Hakomi, mindfulness is both a principle and a state of consciousness. So it's very much the foundational state of consciousness that we are in. And the person who is the leader or the therapist or the practitioner is in a state of mindfulness, and then we coach the person who's receiving the session to be in a state of mindfulness as well. So it's not about ordinary conversation. In Hakomi therapy or the Hakomi dynamic, it is we don't even need the story at all. We barely even need to talk, because so much of it is, as just like that first session that I experienced, it was he noticed that I wasn't looking straight ahead. And that's a bit of avoidance, right? You're avoiding something. And so just the experiment of having me look straight forward evoked all of these experiences that I was avoiding. And so that Hakomi, that's part of what it is. And we can use all kinds of experiments. We can use verbal messages and see what the response is. And we can use any kind of physical mannerism or tone of voice, or there's hundreds of these observations that we can make, and then we can work with that, and we experiment with that. And I think because Hakomi is based on these exquisite principles, there's a real visceral sense of safety. And basically, the subconscious or the soul knows when you're safe, even if consciously you don't know. And when you truly are safe, when the soul feels safe, it will reveal itself. It will reveal the deeper, more painful memories and issues that often, again, people that have had tons of therapy, like me, but I've seen it over and over and over, that you get to the deeper issues and the deeper healing. I've never seen anything go deeper. And that's an understatement. So, mindfulness. Very, very focused on the present experience. The third principle is nonviolence. And with Hakomi, nonviolence is real. It's an exquisite interpretation of nonviolence. Again, even the idea of labeling someone would be violent for us. And labeling, something that just blew my mind. I thought it was so profound that one of the innovations that Ron developed, I think fairly early on, is, in therapy, you, as a therapist, you notice when someone has resistance, right? Resistance to what you're trying to do, or even ways that people protect themselves. And it could be even like, sitting like this, right? This means something. And it's a way to feel more comfortable and to feel more safe and to protect yourself. And there's many of these. And so in most of the kinds of therapies out there, then it's not that they're bad. It's just, but Hakomi's a different paradigm. So I'm not criticizing, but just showing you the difference. Lots of forms of therapy that deal with trauma, when the therapist encounters resistance, there are techniques to overcome the resistance. So you're going about trying to consciously overcome the resistance. And in Hakomi, we support the resistance. It's literally a complete reversal. And oh my goodness, it is unbelievably dramatic when you see what happens when someone's protective strategies, right? Instead of someone trying to take it away and force you, to change or to give it up, you actually support the person, or we take it over for them. Like say someone is sitting and you're interacting with them, and maybe they're, just, stroking their arm or something, right? Just comforting themselves in that way. It's a common one. So then we might have an assistant come up and do that for them. So, and when that is taken over and someone does it for them, it's a very profound experience for the person, because their coping strategies are recognized, accepted, and supported, and they go right into deeper material. It's miraculous. So that was a very significant innovation that and these kinds of innovations, again, came to him over this 40-year period of developing it. He would be with people, all of a sudden he'd go, whoa, what if we did this? And then he would try it. And I should say, I'm skipping around, but thank you for listening. He would try something, and then if it didn't work, he would of course not follow through, and he would follow through with what worked. He was extremely scientific minded. So I would say Hakomi is based on Buddhism and Taoism. It's also, which is spiritual, so it's based on spiritual principles. At the same time, it is absolutely backed up by science. And Ron Kurtz was very into science, and he was friends with a lot of neuroscientists and all kinds of innovative, he had friends with all kinds of famous people. He never talked about it, but he wanted to always back up his method with scientific proof of why it worked. And so anybody I honestly don't have a mind to remember the names of the scientists and all, but it's all documented. I can find it for you if you're interested in that. But do know that it is backed up by science. As a matter of fact, at the very end, and And in that final talk, he was very excited because neuroscience was making these big advances because they could image the brain at that point. And that's when they started to talk about the fact that the brain continues to evolve and change for our whole lifetime. Before that, the science was that it develops to a certain point and then it stops and then it deteriorates. But by brain imaging, science found out, no, that's not true. The brain actually changes physically over the lifetime. But what he was really excited about was the fact that the science about this neuroplasticity was that the brain only changes physically with experience. So it's the experiencing self. And there's a big, there's a dividing line between the experiencing self, and the experiencing self is the now, right? It's what's happening now. Now. So in the body, in our emotions, it's the experiencing self as opposed to memories or stories. Not that those aren't nice and valuable, but memories and linear understanding and intellectual understanding doesn't change the brain, but the experiencing self does change the brain. So he was very excited because that absolutely backs up Hakomi, because it's all experiential. So back to nonviolence. Actually, we covered that very nicely. The fourth principle is mind-body holism. And that's the idea that obviously that the mind and body are connected, and that what happens. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yes. Everything that happens in the mind affects the body. 100%. It's even cool now that we know about water, right? Like Dr. Emoto, and that if you, say love to this water and create crystals, they're beautiful crystals. And if you talk hate, it's ugly crystals. So it's very true about the mind-body connection. So that's obviously it's a big part. Clearly, he originally called it body-centered psychotherapy. Oh, I'm running out of time. Mind-body holism, unity is the fifth. And these are the principles in this book. And then I just want to say, after this book was written, I would say possibly one of his most significant developments was he developed a practice he called loving presence. And that became a foundational practice for Hakomi. And it basically combines exquisite presence, right? Just the kind of presence you have when you're assisting a woman giving birth, and with a loving, caring attitude. And the kind of twist to loving presence is at the same time that you're being with someone in a state of presence and a loving attitude, you're seeking what's nourishing about that person for you. So you're experiencing them in a positive way, in a way that nourishes you. And it sounds really simple, not a big deal, but it's a really big deal. And again, the soul perceives all of these subtle dynamics, and it's very, very beautiful to be in that state of consciousness. And then, so that by the time I met him loving presence, you know, he was all into that. And that was a part of what I learned from the very beginning. He was moving away from the original book into these other areas. So let's see. I want to point out this book too. This is a book that he wrote with Greg Johansson, Grace Unfolding, and it's Psychotherapy in the Spirit of the Tao Te Ching. It's quite beautiful, and so maybe I'll just end with a little very short reading from this book. The Tao is called the Great Mother, empty yet inexhaustible. It gives birth to infinite worlds. It is always present within you. You can use it in any way you want. So I will take questions. Yes?
Have there been any teachings since he died? Any trainings in Hakomi since he died?
Well, there is a worldwide Hakomi network. So there are chapters around the world, Japan, China, all around. And there's an organization in Canada called Hakomi Educational Network. And they've got a great online presence. And they are archiving a lot of his old tapes and things. And it's a great resource. In the United States, oddly enough, there are not many training centers. But so there are some. Yeah, there are some. And I would say there are none right now that I know of that are that have the commitment that we do. And I'm not saying this as marketing, but it just happens to be the truth that I think because of my experience with Ron, and I have the same commitment to this refined Hakomi that he had. And so we are just doing in-person, but there are opportunities for all kinds of experiences with Hakomi Educational Network. Does that answer your question?
Pretty much. It just sounds like it was lost after he died and didn't really continue the training programs that would have created thousands of other Hakomi practitioners.
I think it did continue. My involvement stopped. And so this is a change right now. We've established Hakomi House again. I decided not to call it the Ron Kurtz Center, he's not here, but we're calling it Hakomi House, and we already had it in 2002, but it's exactly the same spirit. It's the same refined Hakomi. It's exactly what I experienced with him. So your question was, are trainings still happening since he died? And yes, but again, because Hakomi evolved over 40 years, I mean, there's a Hakomi Institute in Boulder, Colorado that Ron Kurtz started, and it's still there. So it's more oriented to psychotherapists, but I don't even know exactly what they're doing now. Everything evolves, but it's still there. And there are others in the country. So there's a lot. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm trying to formulate the question because it's in my mind. So with the training, I know that there's these two branches. There's the branch before the refined and then the refined method that was developed up here. And in looking at trainings, a lot, I work as a therapist. They're guided towards like the professional skills training, which is like the pre-refined. And it's like you said, it's not in person, it's heavily online. And I'm more interested in like an in-person embodied experience and training. And I'm wondering if the trainings offered through Hakomi House, like, can be woven into individual psychotherapy.
Absolutely.
It's, yeah.
Actually, I wish I had another. We have some psychotherapists, of course, in our training currently, and even someone that's sitting right here who, and so the question was, I want to repeat it for the thing, was just
Like, yeah, if the experience and the principles, practice of the Hakomi house can be woven in with individual psychotherapy.
yes. So can the experience of a Hakomi training, if you're a psychotherapist already, then be incorporated into your practice? Absolutely. That absolutely happens a lot. And there's many ways that you can incorporate it, and it can work really beautifully. And, you know, we're helpful with that, too. Yeah.
I know the refined method, it's different, and it's more refined.
It's more simple.
Yeah, and so a lot of times when I'm speaking with other training programs, they're like, oh, you need this one, and it's more complicated, and it's more for therapy. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't really resonate with what I'm going for. So, yeah.
I understand, because really, everyone who offers Hakomi is different. That's the truth, right? Probably it's the same with all psychotherapists, too, because it's the individual qualities that you have that people come to, right? And so it's the same. And ours is different, that we only do in person. And that is the only thing I would want to do, because it's joyful for me. So I only do it because it's so joyful and satisfying to me. So does that answer?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Would you consider your group and yourself a sense of spiritual mediums?
Well, good question. I would say there are people in our training who could call themselves that. You could definitely say that because they have those qualities. I do think Hakomi, doing a Hakomi training and actually committing yourself to that altered state of consciousness, right, to actually embody the principles, it accelerates your spiritual evolution. It accelerates your capacity for intuition more than anything else I've ever seen. Yeah.
Very good.
So I think that's what's significant. So if you're meant to be a medium, it'll accelerate it. But
I met a lot of spiritualists, and I said I wanted to meet a good mirror. And so that's what I was getting from your conversation about keeping things succinct and somewhat terse, but at the same time being direct, of understanding the person, asking what their personal individual needs are, and looking within themselves, and also as, like I said, like a spiritual medium, and reflecting that back to the person who's looking for whatever they're looking for.
well, so the question was about if some of the people in our training are spiritual mediums.
Yeah.
And I would say, even if they are, Hakomi isn't the place for it. In other words, we're there to midwife the other people to connect to their inner knowing and their psychic abilities, or whatever it is that they're meant to be, their true self. Does that make sense? So we're in that paradigm. So if you're a medium, that's cool. You can come and do Hakomi, and believe me, you'll get in touch with your own trauma. And I've never seen anything resolve trauma the way Hakomi does. And it's in the most gentle, it happens spontaneously when the person's ready. So it's that nonviolent piece. Like to us, if I'm sitting with you and I have a psychic knowing about you, that would be invasive. But if you come to me, and if I'm a psychic and you come to me, as a psychic, and I want your psychic feedback, that's fine. But not in Hakomi. I want them to experience their own knowing.
So when you say them, who do you mean by them?
The person that we're with.
Ah.
And in the trainings, we take turns. So everyone has a chance constantly to be the giver, right, of Hakomi, and to be the receiver. So it's
That's why I wanted to iterate. It's different from regular psychology. You know, if you go to a psychologist, you know, they probably give you something that's learned from academia. So with Hakomi, how would you say it's different from like a regular psychologist session?
because we don't get into the story at all. We don't do everyday conversation. We read the body, and we do experiments and experiences that get the person deeper.
All right.
It's quite different,
Okay.
but yeah. Thank you for the question. Yes.
Do you have a flyer or handout that has all this information of when these things are happening? And how
I
much they
wish we
cost?
did. I do not have that with us, but we have a website, hakomihouse.org, and that has our schedule. And it's where we are at the beginning, as I said, soft beginning. And we have, it's all in motion. And in 2026, we will have a full 9-month offering from March through November. And we'll be doing some things in the winter. So if you're at all interested, please go on the website and
sign our email list.
oh yeah, sign the email list here. And yeah, be in on the beginning.
Oh, one other question. They have something coming up on the 12th. Are you related with that? It's a Hakomi 3-day event.
That is not mine.
Oh, that's not your own.
No. There are a number of other people that are involved and do their own thing
In Ashland?
with it.
This is in Ashland.
A little bit in Ashland,
Oh.
yeah. Some things have been, it's the time for things to come forward.
And there's also the film that you're showing a week from Thursday here.
Yes, we're showing a film a week from Thursday, that last public talk that includes a full session, seeing a full session. So it's another great way to get more information.
What time is that, Marina? On Thursday.
Is it 7?
So I have just a comment. As you were speaking of the principle loving kindness,
Yes.
loving presence.
Loving presence, yeah.
I got so present to your conversation with your daughter when she was 10 and your commitment really to create that with her. And so behind you is really the visual emulation of what occurred out of that.
Yeah.
Profound, you know,
You're right.
you know, 14 years ago or how many. So it was just so wild, you know, to hear the principle and
25 years ago.
Spoke 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, and anyway, I just thought it was really beautiful the way it's right here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you. It means a lot to me.
Well, you know, I can tell, you know, I mean, we can tell, we could feel it. Actually, it's feeling it, not
Yeah.
even.
Yes,
talking
feeling it.
about
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, dear. Well, we can break now and we'll have a little time. Can my Hakomi people stand up, show themselves, and maybe just, and so and there's someone over here too. And when we break now, we have another 20 minutes to be in this space if anyone would like to talk to any of us.
So what is your weekends in September, October, and November that you were, I mean, do you have dates? You have
Yes,
dates,
we do
obviously.
have dates,
Yeah,
yes.
so that would be heavy.
In September.
Later
Huh?
in the month, so it's like.
Yes,
you know,
it's towards the end of this month,
Okay,
and it is on the website, hakomihouse.org,
okay.
and I think it's the 26th, 27th, 28th. That is what it
So
is.
what's the cost of it?
It's a sliding scale of $200 to $400 a day. And we are planning to do fundraising for scholarship, which we don't have yet. We are a nonprofit, so $200 a day is the
Fair energy.
most accessible price. It's what you can afford, you know, and that's good. Yeah, so $600 for the weekend at the low price, and it's a bargain. It's small. It's always very small groups. It's an absolutely beautiful space, very spiritually alive. People say it all the time. There's tons of stories about the space. It's a very special situation, unusual. So thank you all for coming.